The Mexican Supreme Court rejects an appeal to legalize abortion there. Plus, British MP Boris Johnson draws out of the race for Prime Minister. Thanks so much for joining us for teleSur's English. I'm Cody Weddle, and this is From the South. We'll get to those stories in a second. But we begin in Colombia, where expectations are running high there in the country, as the United Nations has confirmed that a first group of international observers have arrived in the country to start preparations for the verification of the end of the conflict there. Our correspondent Natalia Margarita has more.
Following the agreement on a bilateral and definitive ceasefire and laying down of weapons recently reached by the FARC and the Colombian government in Havana, a first group of 23 UN observers from Latin American countries have arrived in Colombia. They will prepare the establishment of the United Nations political mission that will be monitoring and verifying Colombia's end of the conflict.
El gobierno nacional y la FARC.
This is clearly a demonstration that what has been agreed, signed and announced from Havana is now moving towards the implementation, towards making a reality of the transit of the combatants into the areas where they'll be located and start laying down their arms. That process for the end of conflict requires a verification that will be under the guidance of the UN and the community of Latin American and Caribbean states.
Los miembros del Consejo tienen
The engagement of these two international bodies in the country's end of the conflict was agreed by the FARC and the government earlier this year. It was unanimously supported by all 15 UN Security Council members, who backed the resolution for the establishment of a political mission of unarmed observers that will be on the ground initially for a period of 12 months.
This is a guarantee for the peace process, but it is also the first time in the history of global conflict that in such a short period of time the United Nations Security Council approves a resolution on non-armed political mission to accompany this important peace process, which perhaps is currently the most important process worldwide.
The arrival of this first group of UN observers comes as a number of different social sectors have voiced their concerns regarding the safety guarantees, not just for the FARC members that eventually lay down arms, but also for the communities that live in the rural areas where paramilitary groups continue to expand, threatening peace construction.
In this moment, there are many risks, and it is important to remember that the recent deal on the end of the conflict includes also an agreement on a policy to comprehensively fight against paramilitarism.
Y también hay documentos.
Beginning in July, a second group of UN observers is expected to join the preparations on the ground, so that the United Nations will be able to begin monitoring and verifying activities as soon as a final peace deal is signed and the bilateral ceasefire comes into effect. Natalia Margarita, teleSur, Bogotá.
Moving on now, the Mexican Supreme Court rejected proposals on Wednesday to legalize abortion throughout the country. Now, this result means that women who seek illegal abortions still face up to 5 years in jail there. Protesters for and against abortion demonstrated outside the Supreme Court as they waited for the result. And we stay in Mexico, where a damning new report has called for greater migrant protection. Now, the report, compiled by activists throughout Mexico, has called for protection for those crossing the country toward the United States. Investigators backed up their report by providing evidence of kidnapping, human trafficking, and sexual violence as threats towards the migrants. Roughly 8,000 people hit the streets of Buenos Aires, Argentina, Wednesday to protest continued hikes in energy and electricity prices. Rates there for water and electricity have increased by an average of 700% since President Mauricio Macri came to power last December. Protesters expressed their anger over the energy rate hikes by the government. They wore blankets there, as you're seeing, and carried lit candles to demonstrate the focus of the protests on the government's energy policies. Bolivian indigenous women known as cholitas have put on their local soccer jerseys and dresses to take part in a national soccer tournament. Now, they set out to prove that football is not just a man's sport. Our correspondent Dimitri O'Donnell now with that story.
This is no ordinary soccer tournament. It's the national finals for Cholitas, Bolivia's indigenous women known for their colourful dresses and bowler hats. And in this game, they've proudly combined both their team jerseys and polleras, or multi-layered skirts, in what must be the most unusual national kit in football today.
It's because we have this costume, the pollera, that we can't take off so easily to wear the shorts, so we play in our traditional dress. It's with great pride that we take part in this tournament.
It's also to have some fun, and they know that this is just for sport, and more than anything for unity of us sisters and friends.
Over the past decade, Bolivia's Cholitas have tackled many different areas in society that they were previously barred from. They've been elected to Senate, become wrestlers, mountain climbers, and now footballers. And as this tournament shows, they're determined to keep on scoring these little victories to help beat down discrimination. Teams of indigenous female soccer players, both young and old, took part in the first tournament of its kind in Bolivia. For some players, soccer shoes were traded for sandals, a more comfortable choice of footwear. But aside from the intense competition, these ladies also wanted to prove they're every bit as talented as the guys.
Soccer is a sport for both men and women, and we women can also play. I also know that women are the better players. I realized that a long time ago.
And while some players may need a little more practice with their footwork, these female soccer players are showing that the beautiful game is also about making friends both on and off the pitch.
I used to play basketball and football. Now I'm old and I cannot play so well, but I brought along my team because we want to be healthy. Playing sports is healthy. We want to be fit, so we like to play.
The tournament was such a crowd pleaser, organisers say they've achieved their goal and plans are afoot to make next year's competition even bigger and better. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSur's, La Paz.
Former London Mayor Boris Johnson abruptly pulled out of the race to become the next Prime Minister of Britain. Now, the leadership battle there has been sparked by current Prime Minister David Cameron. You'll remember his decision to step down after losing the EU referendum. Home Secretary Theresa May, who backed staying in the EU, is the favorite to win the contest and become the new Prime Minister there. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for an attack on an Afghan police academy near the capital of Kabul that has killed at least 27 recruits. According to government officials, another 40 were wounded in these suicide blasts. Now, this attack is the latest major assault by the group, and it comes just 9 days after 14 Nepali security guards were killed in another suicide bomb attack. Turkish police have detained 13 people in connection with the triple suicide bombing at Istanbul's main airport, which killed 42 people. Among those detained for Tuesday's attack were 3 foreigners. Officials conducted 16 simultaneous raids throughout Istanbul. Rodrigo Duterte was sworn in as president of the Philippines earlier this Thursday in Manila. The incendiary new president promised in a speech after taking his pledge at the presidential palace to be relentless in tackling corruption, crime, and drugs in the Southeast Asian country. Hundreds of farmers from around Spain gathered outside the Ministry of Agriculture in protest. They demanded that the government apply to the EU for financial assistance for the country's olive and raisin sectors. This protest follows a long line of recent ones due to the falling agriculture prices. Egypt has temporarily opened the Rafah border crossing for 5 days in both directions ahead of the Muslim Eid al-Fitr holiday. Noor Herzine now with those details.
Egyptian authorities opened the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip Wednesday morning for 5 consecutive days in both directions in an attempt to ease the suffering of some 1.8 million people living in the coastal territory. Gaza's Interior Ministry confirmed Monday that Egypt has confirmed that the crossing will be opened Wednesday through Monday for the transit of necessary vulnerable and humanitarian cases ahead of the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr. On each day, 2 buses will be dedicated to the passage of Egyptians registered for travel with the ministry.
30,000 people are registered with the Interior Ministry to travel through the Rafah crossing, including patients, students, residents abroad, stranded wives, and holders of foreign passports. These areas are in bad need of travel. Patients are at risk of losing their lives. Other people are at risk of losing their residence, jobs, or classes abroad. Many social problems have spread in Gaza due to the closure of the Rafah crossing.
The Egyptian government opened the border crossing for 4 days earlier this month, ahead of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, allowing about 3,000 Palestinians to depart. According to the Interior Ministry, about 30,000 Palestinians who want to travel are still stranded in Gaza. Egypt has enforced Israel's blockade on the tiny strip since Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi took office in 2013. The 9-year blockade has contributed to aggravating poverty and unemployment rates in the conflict-stricken Gaza. Nohar Zintrisu TV, Gaza.
Brazil has reassured that the metro line connecting downtown Rio de Janeiro to the Olympic Village will be ready for the start of the Games on August 5th. Now, according to Transport Secretary Rodrigo Vieira, Rio de Janeiro's state budget has been reworked to guarantee that the work will be completed in time. Metro Rio's Line 4 is due to open on August 1st. Michael Phelps has become the first U.S. male swimmer to qualify for the Olympics 5 times. Phelps has won a record 22 Olympic medals, 18 of them gold. He made his first Olympic team in 2000 in the 200-meter fly. And that's what we're covering. Thanks so much for joining us for teleSur English. I'm Cody Weddle. This has been From the South. Be sure to follow us on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.